course, some more stuff that I've uncovered. As part of being a faculty member here at COCC, one of my favorite things that I get to do, would give me favorite things, is serve on what are called peer teams. So what we do is we are matched up with other colleagues in other departments, and we go visit them in their classes, and we see how their classes are run, and we talk about pedagogy. Because, I mean, the real reason we're here is to hopefully infect you guys with kind of like a love of learning, you know, kind of like keep that ball rolling. So we have these awesome peer teams that we put together, and I got to sit recently, Mindy Williams, I don't know if you guys have had Mindy for writing. She teaches writing, 121, 122, I think, Mindy Williams. She's brand new this year. Fantastic, love her, totally stoked to be here. And I sat in her class last term, and a bunch of students were in groups, and they were reading, I think it's 121 is the course. Is this the one where you read like a position argument, and then you either provide a counter argument or you support the position? Is that 121?
No.
That's not. That's 122. So I'm sitting at 122 then. I was sitting at 122 last term, or maybe it's fall term. And one of the articles they were reading was, I don't think I have the actual article here, but the article was written by a student about how evil energy drinks are. You know, how energy drinks should be banned because of the high levels of caffeine and the health risks. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting, let me get into this. So I started reading, and he started quoting figures about energy drinks, and he was talking about, you know, you take, for example, a fairly typical energy drink like, and he named one, and he said, this one's 1,500 milligrams per bottle. I'm like, holy crap, that's like every cup of coffee I've drunk in the past 3 months together. Then I said, wait a minute, is it? So I went and did some Googling. I Googled caffeine in a cup of coffee, 95 milligrams. That's making the assumption it's an 8-ounce cup of coffee. So I consume probably 3 of those a day, which I know is hard to believe before I get here, before I see you guys. So I'm going to call it 300 milligrams for me a day. So that would be roughly 5 times that. So that's a week's worth of caffeine in one bottle of energy drink. Which, again, that seems excessive. I mean, caffeine's a diuretic. It dries you out. It dehydrates you. We're a dehydrated society. So I said, oh, wow, holy crap. Are they all like? So the first thing I thought was, are they all like this? Because this article was telling me about these ones that had high caffeine contents. Are they all like this? So anyway, I started reading caffeine info often misleading or missing on energy drink labels, but you can see why. Yeah. My God, if there's 15,000 milligrams of caffeine in energy drink, I'm going to tell people, it's got a little bit of caffeine in it. Don't count on finding out. Tested 27 popular energy drinks. 11 didn't list the amount of caffeine. Among the 16, 5 had more than 20% more caffeine than the label claimed. One had about 70% less. Okay, so interesting. Amount of caffeine is worrisome. Cardiac MRI reveals energy drinks alter heart function. So I start reading that, and I said the amount of caffeine is up to 3 times higher than in other caffeinated beverages like coffee or cola. So I started assembling all this data. I'm like, okay, what am I learning from all this? It looks like energy drinks are the devil as far as caffeine goes. I mean, I've already seen studies that show if you drink more than 4 cups a day or 28 cups a week, you're more than double the risk of early death because of cardiac arrest and things like that. Holy crap. If I remember correctly, coffee 6 months ago was like the greatest thing you could drink. It was a health food. And now caffeine's being stricken down as the devil. So anyway, I did a little more research, and there's a really fun website called Caffeine Informer that actually collects the data. I put the address there if you want to check it out yourself. The PowerPoint will be listed for you. Actually, already is. It has, I have the summary statistics on the next page. It's got wonderful graphics, but it also has, in alphabetical, numerical/alphabetical order, all the energy drinks on the market at the point in time that I saw it. It was something like, I can show you here in a second. That's a sample of them. There are actually 578 total energy drinks listed. These are the caffeine amounts in milligrams per fluid ounce. Remember what coffee was? 95 milligrams per 8 fluid ounces. 8 fluid ounces in a cup of coffee, 95 milligrams of caffeine, so 95 divided by 8 is 12-ish, somewhere around 12. 12 milligrams per fluid ounce. Okay, so keep that number in your head. 12 milligrams per fluid ounce is coffee. I want you to look at that data. How does coffee stack up with all those energy drinks up there? It's extraordinarily hard to look at, isn't it? Maybe I was getting nauseous just looking at that. I was too. So I decided to make a little summary statistic for you. So here's 578 in the population of that energy drink list, which I'm sure has changed. Some of those have become outlawed. Some of them are illegal now. So, but anyway, the median amount of caffeine in one of those energy drinks is 9.5 milligrams per fluid ounce. So, remember what we just said. Coffee was what per fluid ounce? 12. The median on the energy drink list was 9.5. Give me one interesting statement you could make, knowing that the median was 9.5.
Who knows which one it will be because there's
Well, more powerful than that. There's actually something you can say with certainty, Sean.
More than half have less caffeine than coffee.
At least 50% of them listed have less caffeine than coffee. Remember what the median is? The median is the halfway, half above, half below 50th percentile. Half of the data is below that. Well, that means half of the, at least half, right? Because that's just the median. There might be more above that. At least half have less than a cup of coffee. So I go back to that first claim a couple back that said blah, blah, more than a cup of coffee. Well, at least half have less. Maybe you just got a bad sample. Or maybe you're trying to focus on the ones that look worse. Bad idea, maybe. Minimum 0, so one or two out there don't have any, which I'm assuming they're called energy drinks because they're loaded with sugar or B vitamins or something like that. B vitamins are a big one too that they seem to like putting in those things. High oxygenation level of blood. Taurine, guar.
I think I had soda on there too because it showed 7-Up.
So 7-Up was on this as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's termed an energy drink. So 7-Up's one without caffeine. Perfect. Maximum 714.3.
What is that?
Oh crap! I don't know. Hang on. I knew somebody's going to ask. Hang on, let's go find the site.
Is that Red Bull and Jaeger?
Dude, I don't know. Let me find the site real quick. Red Bull and Jaeger. I'm always interested in when they mix like vodka and Red Bull. It's like, you want to just screw with your body? Let's give it a stimulant and a depressant at the same time. It's like, hey, I feel fine. It's a lot cheaper to just not drink anything. Oops. Caffeine, corporate caffeine database. Caffeine, here we go, milligrams per, there's 500, 1 ounce pure liquid caffeine. Oh boy. So look at that 714. Notice how many zeros and less than.
Hold on.
Did you find it?
No, there's 2,000.
Oh, remember, that's in milligrams in the entire bottle.
Oh, gotcha.
You want to be looking at this column, milligrams per fluid ounce. 2,000 is spread over 32 ounces. So that's a quart, a freaking quart of bug juice. Yeah, Sean?
Can't you put that in descending or ascending order to make it quicker?
Does it let you do this?
Right there. Right there. Yeah.
Well, shh. Dynaprep? I would have gotten to it quickly as D. Thank you, sir. Dynaprep! It might be discontinued, I don't know. I've never heard of half of these either. If you click on them, I think you get more information about them.
Where to buy?
I could really use that right now. Oh, it's a shot. That's probably, it's basically not an energy drink, it's just you're drinking caffeine essentially, and a little tiny bit of caffeine.
That's crazy.
Look at that packaging, purple, red, orange, yellow. That doesn't scream Satan.
There's flames on the package?
Yeah, those are flames. Satan. So anyway.
Seeing something.
Could be seeing flames. So anyway, the link is here if you want to play with it, friends. But again, I want to keep analyzing. I dug deeper. First quartile, 3.9. Now, that doesn't help us as much. That just tells us what? 3.9 milligrams per fluid ounce. That cuts off the lowest 25%. So the lowest 25%, the least amount of caffeine is 3.9 or less milligrams per fluid ounce. So that means the next 25% goes from 3.9 to median 9.5. The next 25% goes from 9.5 to 12.5, which is arguably a cup of coffee now, isn't it? That's about the same as a cup of coffee. So when I read that many energy drinks have more caffeine than a cup of coffee, I come back with this and say 3 out of 4 don't. Or they have no more than a cup of coffee, right? That's what I come back with. So what those studies are focusing on, see the box plot? Do you see the box? Right there. See the whiskers? See the outliers. There they are in descending order. Now 22.5 is an outlier in this data set. That might not seem like it should be, like that's kind of small. But remember how the outliers are measured in relative position. You take the box, increase it by 50%, and then stack that on the quartiles. You don't have to be very far away to be an outlier by this data. 714 is ludicrous. But, I mean, look at
Wasn't that just for one shot?
That was for one package of one shot, yes. So there's 2 of them in that package, aren't there?
There's only 0.4.
But there was only 1 milligrams in that
Yeah, I
shot.
think they-
Right, but it's per fluid ounce. It was 0.4 of a fluid ounce or 0.3. They're trying to use, what they're doing is, they're trying to use a common unit of measurement, milligrams per fluid ounce. That shot was less than 1 fluid ounce. So if it's 100 milligrams per a tenth of a fluid ounce, it's 1,000 milligrams per 1 fluid ounce. Now, of course, that wouldn't mean that you drink 10 of them at once. Your heart would stop, I would imagine. But they're trying to put a standardized, and much like when you go shopping and you look at unit prices, you're trying to find a common unit, like how much does it cost per ounce? And I want to buy the cheapest one, so I go to Costco, right? Because it costs less per ounce. Does that make sense, Brandy?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you actually consume an ounce of it at a time, unless you don't want to wake up tomorrow. But that's the idea, is a common measurement. As far as concentration of caffeine, I'm not saying it's the best, I'm saying it's the way of one way of standardizing. So again, now here we go, 71% have the same or less caffeine. It's not 75, it's 71. Okay. 90% have less than 3 times the amount of caffeine of coffee. Remember that claim from the article, 3 times the amount of caffeine? 90% have less than 3 times. So where did that article get off saying that many energy drinks have 3 times the amount of caffeine? They're focused on the outliers. Many of the outliers do, but many of the data set don't. So again, skepticism, right? I didn't start this to disprove anything. I started this to find out more. Holy crap! I've drunk 1/3 of 1 Red Bull one time. Back in '97, before you could get it. Before you could get it on the East Coast, it wasn't like, what the hell is this stuff that smells and tastes like sweet tarts and kicks you on your ass? My brother-in-law brought a case back from Colorado. He's like, check this out. I'm like, I'll tell you about it. And we had a pizza, 3 of us, me and my friend Brian and my brother-in-law Rufus. We had split a pizza and each split 1/3 of a Red Bull. I didn't blink for about 3 hours. And I've never mountain biked and wanted to puke so badly in my life. Like it was crazy, just what it did to my guts. I'm like, I'm never doing that again, ever. I don't know how you guys do it. I give you mad props for drinking that stuff. So anyway, coffee instead. So, again, this, in my opinion, is one of those textbook cases of using an outlier when you should be looking at the entire data set. Again, just healthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism. Here's another example. One of my favorites. I want to finish, before we get into the next part of the course, which is fusing this project with where we've been, is we've been mentioning outliers all along. Why do we care about them? Well, you just saw one reason why we care about them. Why? Because they changed the average quite a bit. So did I tell you the Larry Bird story? I think I may have already told you this one. Larry Bird. Okay, so Indiana State University, 1970s. I did tell you this. I thought I had. If I didn't, I'll tell you
I
again.
think it was 1.
Was it 105? Maybe 105, maybe. Larry Bird, Indiana State University in like 1970-ish, made a claim that if you graduated with a bachelor's in business from Indiana State University, on average you'd make, I think it was $10,000 more per year than anybody else at any other business degree in the country at that time. And $10,000 is a lot, period, but in 1970-ish, it's even more of a big deal. What they didn't tell people was they were including Larry Bird's NBA salary when he played for the Boston Celtics. He graduated with a business degree from Indiana State University. But they just went ahead and put his salary in that computation too. So are they lying? No. Are they misleading? Yes. Because they're letting an outlier knowingly pull an average higher than it should be. It's an egregious case. It's an egregious case. So what I want to do is, I want to look at some other examples that are not quite as egregious. This is kind of a fun one we'll do at 244. This is what M&M's, Mars company tells me should be in an M&M, a bag of M&M's, percentage-wise by color. This is what we have seen over time. So what I do is every 3 months, we do the experiment in class. I bring M&M's in, we crack them open, we count them all, and we eat them all. And then I collect the data. This was this is not current term, this is actually last term, winter 2014. We haven't done it yet this term. So if you look at the numbers, there's some agreement. 20% orange, 20% orange. 14, 15% is about the same. 16 to 25, 24 to 16, 13 to 6. Some of the numbers are egregiously off, some numbers are pretty close. So what I do is every 3 months I write them a letter, and it's with a statistical analysis. And I say, guys, I don't know what you keep claiming this, and we keep getting this. And if you've ever been to my office, when you walk in my office, off to the left, there's a stack of letters that I've written to them, and a stack of rejection letters back from them. right next to me. I'm pulling the Andy Dufresne Shawshank Redemption thing. Keep writing them letters, hoping they'll send me more candy. They never do. So we test it every year anyway. But the idea is, it could be that these percentages are actually being used on the machines, and we're just getting goofy outlier data. But the thing is that I get that data every single term. So can we call it an outlier if it happens all the time? Isn't that kind of the antithesis of what an outlier is? An outlier is something that happens rarely, not all the time. So if I was getting this, and then one term I got this, I'd be like, hey, that's kind of fun. I mean, one time a student cracked open a bag and there was a white M&M in it. But that's fun, that's an outlier, because it somehow missed the coloring process. But that's fun. Like years ago I found a penny that hadn't been stamped. It was a copper disc that hadn't been stamped. I was working at a bookstore, and I was doing a change. I'm like, oh, look at that, that's so cool. It just didn't get stamped. Like, what's this word? They said 0, because it actually doesn't have anything on it, so you can't prove it's a penny. But the idea is, that's a true outlier. But if I started seeing lots of those coming up, then I'd be like, oh, maybe something's wrong. Maybe they forgot to actually push the button that's doing this at the plant, or they forgot to dump the candy into the coloring bin. So an outlier shouldn't be happening over and over again. Some other examples. I like this one. I like this one. Sometimes outliers tell you something fun. So what I did was, I looked at the 2013 Portland Timbers and the U.S. men's national team, the 20-plus men's national team for the United States. Go World Cup. Who's watching World Cup this summer with me? There were people. Okay, good. We are Americans. We do not watch soccer. It's like football without pads, right? Yeah, exactly. So what I did was, I wanted to see if there was any interest. I read a book years ago called Outliers. I told you guys about it by Malcolm Gladwell. And he made a note about hockey teams. I wanted to see if it also applied to soccer teams. I wanted to see where these folks were born. So if you look at the slivers that apply to January, February, and March for the men's national team, you notice how it makes up a large chunk of the circle? More than it really should. If you think about it, the first 3 months of the year, there's 12 months in a year, roughly the same length. You would think roughly 25% of the circle should be January, February, March, 25% April, May, June, 25%, 25%, and so forth. What's interesting to me is such a large chunk are right around these 6 months, and then these 6 months make up a little tiny chunk of the remainder. I didn't see the same thing over here with the Portland Timbers. The early years, yes, not so much the late ones, but the early ones. So both January, February, oh, Sean, what are you seeing?
Well, they scout out of the country.
Exactly, totally, absolutely. So what's interesting about the men's national team in particular is, why would you have so many early birthdays, or so many birthdays that seem to be hovered around a certain cutoff date? And this is where the book Outliers, if you need a good summer read, it's actually it's a math book that you'll really enjoy reading, I guarantee it. His theory is that, when do people that play professional sports usually start playing?
Like 3.
Tiny. 3, 4, 5, they're tiny. I mean, I had Max playing soccer when he was 2. I got a video of him when he was barely walking, kicking a soccer ball. Not that I want to force it on him, but he loves doing it, and I love doing it too, so we play soccer constantly. And when you start playing that little, you know, you develop an affinity for it, and probably a skill set, and it's like, I mean, who started skiing when they were like 4 or 5 in here? Yeah, I started skiing when I was 30, and you can totally tell. When you're skiing with my wife versus skiing with me, you watch her ski, it's a thing of beauty. You watch me ski, it's like survival, get down the hill, right? It's a thing of beauty. When you start so young, it becomes natural, right? Well, when these kids are 4 and 5 years old in those little tiny leagues, and midget leagues, and little leagues, the kids that were born a little bit earlier in the age groups are going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit better maybe, only by age. You figure, if you take a 4-year-old kid, a kid that's born in January of that year and is 4, versus a kid that's born in December and is 4, that's almost 25% difference in growth, right? That kid's going to be bigger, faster. Not necessarily a better soccer player, but bigger and faster. And since he's bigger and faster, he can run around a lot more, and who's going to notice him? The coaches that are helping him learn a skill. And that's going to carry on to the little leagues, and so forth and so on. And basically, he kind of gets, or she gets tapped into that train that ends up sometimes in the professional leagues. I challenge you, next time you're at a professional sporting event, crack open a program and look at the birthdays of the players. You'll be surprised. It happens in hockey, it happens in soccer. Amazing how many of those sporting teams have players that have uploaded or heavily loaded birthdays in certain times of the year, which is roughly based around when those little league age cutoffs are. It's incredible. Not because they're better, they were just bigger and faster, which means they got noticed. which means they aren't, like I said, when I find somebody born in like whatever the hell this is, December, I'm like, hell yeah you were! Hell yeah you were! You're born in December and you're playing for the big leagues. That means either you were freakishly large, you were an outlier in December, or you were just that good you could hang with the big kids. You see what I'm getting at, friends? That's kind of what I'm hinting at here. So next time you're at one of these sporting events, look at the birthdays and see how they're distributed. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. And that was what's interesting is Gladwell, who wrote that book, he didn't even notice it. His wife did sitting next to him. She's like, why are all these guys born in February? I was like, what are you talking about? He grabbed the book from me. He's like, January, February, March. What the hell? You know? And then he went and thought about it. And his conclusion was that one. They were just bigger earlier. Yeah, Sean?
And that's why I was saying, if you scout out of the country, that's going to kind of skew that, though.
Because?
Well, southern hemispheres have different seasons.
Different seasons, different regulations for, even if they didn't have a Little League. I mean, basically, Little League in Brazil is you're born. And then you're playing soccer from the time before you get born. I mean, seriously, think about it. I remember my wife told me a story in Brazil of going to visit Brazil with her high school class, and they brought the soccer team. Some members of the soccer team were with her, and they got their asses handed to them by poor kids playing in bare feet in the streets. Because it's part of the culture. Much like baseball, I guess, is here. Would baseball be more national sport than football here?
I think football's kind of taking
Is football taking over?
lately.
It's more American.
It
Yeah.
doesn't take 4 hours to play.
Wonder if soccer will ever easy. Soccer's an hour and a half, worth every minute. The best thing about soccer, people don't understand. I watched the Timbers play Real Salt Lake in the playoffs last year. 100 minutes, 0-0 at the end. And it was like, I walked out there, I'm like, that was the most freaking awesome thing. And I told my friends, like, it was 0, nobody won? I'm like, no, nobody won. I'm like, stupid. Like, it was like chess match for an hour and nobody screwed up. They're like, that's dumb. They just couldn't process why it was so wonderful. And I'm like, I can't prove to you it's wonderful, it's just wonderful. Anyway, speaking of one last example, my son, speaking of my son. So we watched him with great joy when it was right before his 3rd birthday, he started riding the bike. I remember the day, it was August 14th. Yeah, August 14th, 2010. I got a great video I made. We were working for a while, but riding a bike by himself. And one day he just rode away. Just kept going. I'm like, oh, there he goes. And so I remember thinking, like, this is like one of those moments.
Awesome.
Like, it's like before this he couldn't ride a bike and now he can. Like, holy shit, I just saw a moment. Like crazy. Like you don't see like the first word, the first step, the first bike ride away. He's totally stupid. And then after the kind of wore off, we're like, oh, he's riding his bike. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Where'd he go?
I was like, well, no, we know where did he go? Shit, where is he? Where is he? Well, after we brought him in for the night. Where did he go? It's awesome, the skepticism. Me and wife were sitting down talking, we're like, when did you ride a bike? And she's like, I don't know, I think I was like 5 or 6. And I'm like, I'm sure I was at least 6. And I started emailing my friends, and we started collecting some data. So here's what I came up with. No, dude, seriously. This was a